Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today's Givebutter office hours. I'm Josh Kligman. I'm the guest joining and running the show today, along with Sabrina Biggers, who's also here from Storyraise. I'm the co-founder and CEO, and I'm here to talk to you about engaging reports. And today's Giving Tuesday, so it's definitely a day to start thinking about what happens to all that great storytelling that you have after funds come in, whether it's from Giving Tuesday or end of year. And we'll have a discussion around what that means for your organization as you're trying to show impact and show how those gifts are really being put um, to work. Anyway, I'm in Washington, D.C. We founded Storyraise in 2019 when we were thinking about how organizations could find easier ways to just tell that story with web-based reports when you're thinking about annual reports and impact reports. I used to work at a nonprofit myself. I was at a nonprofit for a little over 10 years before starting Storyraise and focus on reports myself. We're going to jump to an icebreaker question here for the audience in just a few minutes. But Sabrina, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sabrina Biggers. I'm the head of sales here at Storyraise, and I am located in the Atlanta, Georgia area.
Great. And Sabrina comes to us from, I guess, over the summer you came to us in the spring after working at Thankview, and you also have great background in the nonprofit world too, working on donor relations and impact reports too, right?
Yeah, so I previously worked at a nonprofit as well as in higher ed, and most recently worked in donor relations at San Diego State University. And then I joined the Thank You team. I was there for about 5 years, so big Thank You fan. And then I joined the Storyraise team this past spring.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for joining me today here, Sabrina, and for having us, Claudia. We're going to dive into a couple examples in just about a minute that I've seen out there from a variety of nonprofits and foundations that were looking for unique ways to tell their stories. And just a little background on StoryRaise. We're a solution for nonprofits to create digital reports and tell stories with the purpose of engaging donors. When I was working at a nonprofit, a big focus was on donor retention. And there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle with donor retention. And I know that after the gifts come in, there's a lot of stewardship that's involved, regardless of the size of your organization. And engaging the donors throughout the year so they know how the gifts are being spent. And with a purposeful strategic plan is pretty important. And I think that I started to see that even more as StoryRaise was developing with more customers that were creating other types of touch points throughout the year to showcase that impact. And now that it's, you know, a time of the year where your end of year campaigns are in full swing, it's a great opportunity to treat that as sort of an event recap in the middle while it's happening and then afterwards, so that the donors can follow some sort of story, around the calendar as to how their donations are being spent. And the more specific, the better. There's a great analogy that our chief marketing officer at StoryRaise likes to tell about a playground. A playground can come into your town, and your nonprofit could have put it there, and you can go back and say thank you to all the donors and all the community partners to help put that playground there, in one of two ways. Way number one would be to say, like, you put this playground here. Thank you so much. Couldn't have done it without you. And that's great, right? I mean, you're telling them how the funds were being used. You're showing that the playground is out there. The second way would be to go, one level deeper with the storytelling and say, because of your gift, um, these these community members, and you show them in a picture or a video, are now going to this playground after school, and they have something to do where before they didn't. And this is how it's impacting their lives. And now, because of that enrichment, our youth development program is doing X, Y, and Z, and we couldn't do it without your help. You're telling that story throughout the year. I think those annual reports and impact reports are are mainly times when you're saying thank you. And then you have times like today, right, with Giving Tuesday, and after this through December 31st with your end of year campaign where you're saying, and we couldn't do it without you, and we also need your help a little bit further. And you have a call to action that is to give a gift, and that happens through your email, through social media, and through various types of reports, right? Storyraise actually has an integration. I'll share what it looks like in a minute with Givebutter that can help you create either a landing page or a report that says just that. You know, here's the impact, couldn't have done without you, and then donate through your Givebutter account right within the report. So there's less clicks for your donors. Collect the funds just like you normally would with Givebutter, but you're telling a story of impact also. And then afterwards, you can create a regular report that kind of summarizes that and shows how the gift was spent. So I'm going to share my screen here, give a few examples from best practices that I saw, but I'd love to answer questions along the way. So, you know, as you're seeing this, if you want to share what your organization does, feel free to drop it in the chat or raise your hand. And then as our whole team sees it here, we'll pause what we're doing and talk about this. So this can be a little bit collaborative. And if you just joined, we're going to really focus on showing impact stories through the idea of web-based reports. They're a little more engaging for donors, a little easier to read. And we'll also show some best practices out there around analyzing metrics and then seeing what your donors are doing with the engagement. And that can't be done with every report that's out there. We'll show you best practices, how we see it's done really well with Storyraise, and just take that as an example. Like it's just a nice example of what a report could look like, however you want to get that done. And then if at the end you want to learn more about Storyraise and the integration with Givebutter, that's great. So I'll go ahead and share here. And Claudia, if you see questions pop up or review of thoughts, or Sabrina, if I'm missing anything, go ahead and feel free to jump in. So I'll tease this here, but this is a report that Givebutter made. It's a mock impact report. And if I scroll down at the end, you'll see what the integration looks like, where donors can actually give a gift through some sort of impact report, through an end of year event recap, right into Givebutter. And I'll show what that looks like in just a little bit. It's actually, I think, one of the better reports that we've seen out there from a design perspective. Probably because there's butter dripping down the page, and that doesn't really happen in most of the reports that we see out there. But I'll start with one real report. This comes from the Hawaii Community Foundation. I know they're actually using Givebutter, so it's a nice example. This is not a report where they're asking for a gift, because it's just a recap of what happened after they had their fires now like 13, 14 months ago. This is at the 6-month mark. Like they've since created a second report showcasing like the developments, but you can also imagine like what it would look like if it was part of an ask going beyond the thank you. But it's a nice best practice report because they're using a table of contents to kind of organize it as such, which is kind of a key feature of Storyraise as well. But however you kind of put that together, it still feels like a report. And as I scroll down here, it's just a simple design. It's not too text heavy, right? So it makes it pretty approachable. And pretty immediately, which is introductory letter, they get into the setup with what happened, and talking about why they need your help and why they have a problem. They do so in a way that's like a very simple infographic to create. And then they kind of go into the impact stories, which they call coming together. So I'll share this next section here. And this is kind of actually like some of the key advantages I think of having a web-based style report is that I can click from link to link and kind of scroll through it, and just feels very approachable and most of all easy to read. So they start to tell the stories about, you know, why it's really important to raise these funds, and the kids especially that are being impacted, along with the rest of the community. On and on, showing how your support is being used. So I'd love to hear it in the chat if anybody has created similar type reports, just showing impact along the way, where you're not even necessarily at the point in that cycle throughout the year of asking for donations. But if you are just kind of positioning everything and saying thank you, I'd love to hear that or see examples. You can share links too. So something does pop up in the chat. Feel free to interrupt me.
Yeah, I do have a quick question for you since we're recording and people might revisit this subject later on. Something I know about our customers is that they love templates. So I don't know if Storyraise offers something that they can just plop in information or making sure that this is really easy to create and then send out, especially because it's already December 3rd. I know that once people are, coming down from the Giving Tuesday momentum, making sure that they have a quick, easy way to create those end of year reports.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes, we have a lot of different templates, and the templates range from and I'm going to share this on the screen as I pull it up here in real
Mhm.
time. But they range from more common annual reports and impact reports to donor reports, which are more about one-to-one type reports. If you're going to think about like, well, I guess mostly major donors, where you want to send the report just to that one donor, which could be done also with personalization. And we have templates so that you can create one report, send it out to 1,000 different donors or 100,000 different donors, and everybody gets their own version of the report. And what varies is not just the, like the, hey, dear Claudia, dear Sabrina, that's in an opening letter. Videos could be different, the stories could be different, and you could segment out those audiences by the giving level. So gold level donors for silver level donors could get different stories or programs that people are interested in. So these that we have here, if for some reason someone's listening to the recording and not looking, impact and annual reports, like I mentioned, and donor reports. On the fundraising side, solicitation reports. If you're at any private or independent K through 12 schools, there's also endowment reports, and that's a template that could also be used for other types of fund reports or scholarship reports, event recaps, various pitch decks, which could be to corporate partners or for larger proposals, and then all types of ways to say thank you too. So I think reports can extend themselves to live without like a table of contents like I just showed you, but it's really just a landing page where here I'll pull up an example here if you want to see it, Claudia. Like here's a video and a note with a handwritten font that could just be generalized or personalized. And notice how like there's no, like the other report I showed you from the Maui Community Foundation had a table of contents on the left. This one's very short and to the point, has this opening video, a letter, maybe you're just kind of showing the impact with a quick story, and that's it, right? So it's a nice way you can use a template just to quickly create something like this and send it to one person or your entire CRM's worth of context.
Another quick question for you here. How does that personalization work? So will they have to enter like like their database of individuals they're trying to reach out to, and it pulls dynamically their name?
Yeah. I have an example here. So Sabrina, you mind helping me out? Why don't you answer that? And I'm going to pull up the example while we talk, and we can actually show that in action.
And I'm sorry to skip ahead. I just know that these are really big aspects for our customers.
I'm glad. No, we want the question, so it's great.
Yeah, so Storyraise can integrate with CRM databases and actually pull the data from the CRM. So what would happen is our team would meet with their team and decide what data they want to communicate between Storyraise and their CRM. And then once we get that mapped out, you can design out your reports, like Josh will show you here an example, where you can pop in variable data, which will then pull it in from someone's CRM.
Yeah, I mean CRM is the best. So if you use the free CRM at Givebutter or elsewhere, or it's just a spreadsheet, it doesn't really matter. It will work in Storyraise. So in this example, here's a impact report that was created for a mock constituent named Sarah. So it says, "Dear Sarah," right? And it's pulling that first name, because behind the scenes when you make it, it says at Sarah or at first name, and then Sarah pops in. And then here, I'll go to the next section, which is really where the impact story changes. And that's where this one report that I made, it's sent out to like all these different donors. But when Sarah opens it, it's a specific story about Sarah because she supports this program. So notice there's a building on the right and this black text with the white font on the left, and then it ends. I'm going to change this report to it looks like for someone named John, so totally different donor. It'll refresh the page, and it's going to show the same report that we made, but it's going to be different content for John down to the story. And it dynamically can do that. I mean, the easiest way to think about that is you may have gold level donors, silver level donors, and bronze level donors, and you're just going to show 3 different stories to 3 different audience segments. So this one says Dear John, and then when I go to the next section, like before, instead of showing Sarah's story, it's showing John's story. Totally different picture. Remember, that was a building on the right. John likes to support programs that produce orange yearbooks or whatever that is, right? And then that's it. There's nothing underneath it. It ends. So I didn't create anything different. I'm not creating multiple reports. It's just surfacing different stories. So
I
that's
just
what it looks like.
fangirl really quickly here. I love this. I am a big advocate for targeting your audiences. I would hate to be a recurring donor and get a message that makes me feel like I'm just a general donor, one-time donor. So
Yeah.
I really can't wait for people who couldn't join us today to watch this actually see the power of Storyraise.
Um, our chief marketing officer got an email from, I think it was a bank a couple years ago. And it was kind of like that email now, like we all get from Spotify. I use Apple iTunes, but like most people get this from Spotify, right? And it shows like what is it, like your year review? If anyone gets this, just cut me off and tell a better version. And what does it show? Does it show like how many songs you listened to or what your most listened to album was? What do they actually show there? Does anybody know?
Yeah, it shows all sorts of metrics based on your listening throughout the year.
Okay. So it's so specific, and it's the same concept where they're probably creating one email and it's just filling in the blanks based on your specific data and they're mapping it. So I mean, we'll help customers map it, so you don't have to worry about that. So, but it's a simple thing on the surface, but it feels so. We saw that email, we're like, oh wow, like what could this be in the Storyraise world for nonprofits creating digital reports? Because I know a lot of nonprofits we talk to are creating personalized reports, and I think the best practice was using spreadsheets and kind of mapping the cells, right? And then bringing those over, and then you have a PDF. I'll show you in a second the problem I think I have with the PDF version of this, which you can also make at the same time you're making digital, because there's always some donors, right, that want to print it out, or you just may have another need for a PDF, and that's great. But the personalization's just this not, even if it's just someone's name, right? It's just this other level of showing that you're paying attention to detail and that you care. And I think that when you have someone that's giving $20 a year, that you're hoping can move up to that next level of $50 or $100, whatever that next level is over time. I mean, in most places where they're giving, they're not getting that level of attention. If technology can help you easily do that, and steward the donors that never get that level of stewardship, just at that small level of personalization within web pages or reports. And I'm not talking about emails, because we are not a CRM or an email platform. But when they get to this page, I think that can go a long way. So good questions. Claudia, any others along those lines, or did that answer what you were thinking?
I have a few more as I'm thinking about
Yeah, please.
our supporters, but not our supporters, our customers. But I want you to continue covering some of the material, and maybe we'll get to those points as well.
Okay. All right. We'll get to it, I'm sure. So let's see. So here's this report. Let me go back to the main page on desktop. And I mentioned PDFs before. I was trying to find an example of a PDF that's really hard to read. So instead, I'm showing you what I Googled, which was show me a PDF that's hard to read on a cell phone. And the kind of results that pop up are like, I cannot open a PDF on my phone, having trouble, or here's how to create one that is actually clearly shown on a phone screen. I was trying to see if I've always thought this, but before an hour ago, I was trying to see if if other people feel like that it actually is hard to read a PDF on a phone. I know it is, like if there's like a flip book kind of situation, but sometimes there could be a lot of content that doesn't display correctly. And that's one of the reasons why I think truly digital, or I should say web-based reports to show donors impact should kind of meet them where they're at. We're seeing 60% of reports at Storyraise that nonprofits donors are opening or being opened on mobile devices or tablet devices, right? So if we want to meet them where they're at and know that we're competing with a busy schedule that includes probably getting interrupted with text messages or whatever else while they're reading your impact reports, we want it to look nice. So here's what the same report would look like on an iPhone 14. So this is minus the crack that's in the middle of my screen. So I'm going to scroll down and you see, and this is a best practice, right? Like, so check your reports and see if they're doing these types of things. Everything's stacked. So when it's not stacked, and then when it becomes hard to read is when all this text that you see under my mouse here would be next to this picture. And then you'd have to kind of zoom in and pinch around on the PDF to see what it looks like. I think a video is a good example where you'd see a video and then the text underneath. So I would just take any PDF that you have or anything that you send out to your donors and just kind of spot check it on your cell phone and see if it looks like it's clear to read, because that at the end of the day, like, that's what's important. And if you want to know a little trick, if you were to, I don't know if this will show up here on my screen, but Sabrina, let me know, or Claudia, if I right click on the screen, I'm in Chrome, by the way, and then it says inspect. Can you see this here?
Mm-hmm.
So you get the pop-up on the screen, you just click inspect. You can get into this mode that I just showed, and then there's a drop down here and I can choose like iPhone 12 or I'll choose Samsung Galaxy S8. So it shows exactly what it looks like on that device. So you can see all different devices. And it's just a nice way to like play around with anything before it goes out to your audience. So, your communications are looking the way they're probably going to see them. Sure, another great storytelling report here that comes from a United Way in Indiana. And this kind of shows off how they work using personalization. I showed you like a letter before that had said, Dear Sarah, Dear John. This is a little behind the scenes before it gets to that point with, how they're creating what's seemingly a normal report, but just simple variables that get dropped in and they go ahead and tell their story. But these impact sections are really like where it's at, right? Like I showed that example of how, that lady with the orange textbook or yearbook, that's a story that's different than another one. It's getting really hyper personalized. So whether that's done manually or in like big buckets for big audience segments, it's a nice touch. That doesn't have to be done for every report throughout the year. I mean, that takes time. Your audiences have to be already segmented. But it's nice to do. And I think this United Way also just kind of takes that and presents their data in a pretty approachable manner.
Quick question for you, and hopefully this helps someone. I know a lot of customers may think, well, I can just put this in an email, and I would love for you to help clarify why it's important to be sending impact reports. And it's not just an end of year thing. Of course, we think of it as end of year to kind of recount on the entire year, but just the importance of sending impact reports.
Yeah. I think it's in the details of the storytelling. And I think that needs a little more space to live within reports, and it should live in a kind of a web type space. So I have 3 reasons for that. One is the details of the storytelling, and you're making me think of a story I heard from Oprah. So I'm going to talk about that in 1 second. 2 are the metrics behind it, and you want to know if people are engaging with it. And that's a little hard to do at the level that I'm going to show you right here that I've seen Goodwill do, which you could do with a web-based report that's a little different than email. And 3 is about also here. So I'll go in that order. And if I forget one of these, you guys will have to keep me real and remind me. All right, Oprah. So she won a major award years ago, and she got up on stage to accept the award. And the details of this are important, but I don't remember them all, so I can't tell you. but she was talking about how the details, meaning which award it was in the context, but she was talking about how when she was a little girl, she remembers lying on the linoleum floor in her parents' kitchen, and she was watching TV, watching Sidney Poitier accept an award, and the ground was really cold, and she felt like she's never seen anything like that before, and she knew what she wanted to do with her life, and she goes on and on and on about the details during her award acceptance, right? So she was talking about where she came from, but she went so far into the details that I don't even remember. I guess this is a good point. Like, I don't remember which award she won, but I remember that there's this whole story about her going into the details. If you're going to tell a good story like that playground example I told before, and really cover on how you're impacting the community, I think you need a little more physical space to do than an email. So you need you need kind of this width and some graphics and things to go beyond that. And the third thing I mentioned was multimedia, like video. And then I'll come back to metrics. You can embed videos right into web-based reports. So this is a YouTube video and it just sits here and people can hit play and they're never leaving the report. It's hard to do that with a lot of other sources, right? They're usually, most of the videos I see out there from organizations are videos that exist already. You could create one that says like, hey, I'm the head of the organization or the head of the board, like, it's been a great year. Thank you so much. And you're making that just for the report. That is something you could do. Or like a special thank you, like I showed you before. So you can get really creative with that. That's another nuance from email. And then when I get to tracking insights, with email, you can certainly see the open rate and the click-through rate. And I think there's probably also some programs that can show you a heat map and show you, where people are clicking. But I'm more concerned with impact reports for donors on how they're engaging with the reports and how that ties into retention. And to me, that really is about how many times they're clicking on different sections of the report, and if they're clicking on the report at all within the report after they click open from the email. So you could see, and these are metrics for this Goodwill report that I pulled up, and they use Storyraise, right? So I can click and see how much time they spent on the report. And that's like another step. That's good. But if the doorbell rings and I leave it up on my browser, and then you think your major donors are spending an hour on it and they didn't really see the report, it could be a little misleading. It could be right, but it could be misleading. But if you look and see how many times they clicked through your 8-section report and they clicked 13 times, and also, by the way, they spent 45 minutes on it, from those clicks that they're really engaged. And there really isn't another way to find out whether your donors are engaged. We're actually working on creating you can kind of see a preview of it here, a donor engagement score, so we can rank for nonprofits, great, so, and poor engagers in terms of how the donors are engaging specifically with reports. And that could be done on a personal level, like, a specific donor that you created a personalized report for, or all your donors in general. All right, Claudia, what other questions do you have, if any? I can come back to some of the ones you mentioned.
I actually really want to dive into a little bit more about the pricing. So you covered my question on analytics.
Yeah.
Not pricing, sorry, sharing, and then we can get into pricing. So I will say, like I had mentioned to Josh and Sabrina before this session, that I have been receiving some reports, some impact reports, and one in particular was a link in an email, and the email took me to their website, and then I had to click on a report in their website. So how easy is it to share the reports? Is it just simple as a link? Is it, you can send it out through Storyraise, talking a little bit more about how seamless that experience is going to be.
Okay, so why don't I pull up a real report here, and I'll show you how easy it is. So I'm in like a sample account here. So here's like a mock report I'm going to pull up, and this is going to load the builder where I actually create the report. So I already started a template. Here's the template. Let's say I built it all, and everything's all drag and drop, by the way, and you can look like your own brand colors and everything, and all the templates are kind of built by, or you can add to them by like dragging over other design blocks. Say, all right, I want to tell a story here. Then you drop in your picture, change the text. So you go through all this, and before you want to publish it and get a URL, like you're asking about, Claudia, I think one thing we like to do is see what it looks like across different devices. So this is the desktop. Then I can see how it's going to look like on tablet, then on mobile, and then also the PDF version if I wanted to do that. And then I can open up a preview URL, which is kind of like what I was showing before. We can see what it actually looks like, on your phone, or you can send this opens a QR code if you really want to see what it looks like on your phone. By the way, if anyone just grabs this off the screen, you could see a preview URL of what this particular mock report looks like on your phone. So you could do that and just get a sense for what that looks like compared to anything else you're producing today. And then you collaborate with your colleagues and edit from there, which you can do, all within the app and make comments and everything. And then finally, you're ready to publish. So on the top right here, I would just go and click the publish page, and then this will answer your question around what you need to do. Oh, and I'm in a report here where I didn't save the name. So I'll just tell you then after I click publish, there's a share button that pops up and it gives a URL. So you just take that URL and it would look exactly like this. Let's let this load for a second. And then you take that URL and then you go to your email and you say, hey, donors, I created a report. Here it is. You include the URL and that's it. And if you happen to create a personalized one where it should look different for everybody, each person that opens up would see their own version of it. And then you can kind of preview that ahead of time, kind of like I'm showing you here. So you can spot check it or check them all. But it's just a URL. And, like, I think it's a United Way and then Goodwill, like I showed you, like some organizations like to embed the report on their webpage so that instead of sending out a URL, they're just saying, hey, just go to, unitedway.com.org/, 2024 impact report and view it there. And then it lives under your like top navigation and it looks like part of your website. We also given it when you click the publish button an embed code. So you can also do that, but it's not necessary.
I love how simple and easy it is to actually access the reports here. Now, I know that we have some people who are probably already thinking about drafting this impact report, what it's going to look like. I wonder if you have some best practices on what should be included in an end of year giving report specifically, and not an end of year giving report, like an impact report. And then if we're using Storyraise, I saw that a lot of people had different sections. How would you break up those sections here?
Yeah, I have kind of my own rule of thumb. I'll show you an example here from American Forest, which is a great organization in Washington, D.C. And I'm going to show you their table of contents and hopefully answer all that. As I open this up in the middle of the report, I just see some great graphics, which shows how you could take assets you already have and just drop in JPEGs, right? And make things look great, which is what they did here. Okay, so this is their table of contents. And they did it in kind of a unique way that only they could, which is they kind of broke it down by what they're doing by season. But I think the same would go for every program, right, that you have. So there's always some sort of introduction. Usually I see the opening letter as part of it. So you have your intro and then either a letter or a video message from the executive director. And it says, thanks so much, couldn't have done it without you. And then you're going into usually your programs. So like when I worked at a nonprofit, I was at a youth development organization and we had 3 major programs. What we did was we showed the impact within each one of those programs. So we would have one section for program number 1, another which was like STEM, and then another one which was healthy living, and then another one which was like youth civic engagement, right? And we talk about, and then all the grants that would be within those programs, and then all the impact that was happening because of that money that we have. And we weave those impact stories about the kids that were the beneficiaries of the donations into each one of those. And if there were events that tied to those programs, we talk about those events in each one of those categories. That way it's all kind of tied together. If you have like a golf tournament, a gala, an event that's not really supporting one program, but it's supporting like unrestricted funds, let's say, I think that's okay to do something separate there when you can have something after that called events or something like that. But on the whole, I would just focus on all the programs and the impact that's happening within it. Usually what I see after that, let me see if I have a good example here. Goodwill may do it, is they do, okay, is they get into, and you can see like they have a totally different way they structure this, right? But I was going to point to financials, right? So with financials, here, I'll open this section. It should be really high level. I mean, I understand that you typically have to wait for your audited numbers to come back from your finance team, and this is the last part to get filled in, so you can leave the blanks there. But usually I just see the revenue and the expenses. This has some links to 990s. I mean, it may depend on what your board requires. This is a list of all their board members, which is nice if you're going to show this off, especially to see it, but it's especially nice if you want to show it off to potential partners and they're like, oh, so-and-so's on your board, and they're more apt to work with you maybe. I would prefer a style that has some, photos there, and maybe less is more, but this is good. A section on volunteers is something that I see sometimes, but not enough. Thanking your volunteers. So it's kind of like an honor roll, but for volunteers. I mean, people want to see their names, but it's probably more important that you show what the volunteers did and show that impact in that section than a list of names. And you could have a list of names, but maybe link to it and have if it's a long list, especially link to it and have it live somewhere else. Keep this report about the stories of impact and just keep coming back to that.
So what, do you have any recommendations for a report that's too short or too long? Like, what is that good middle ground that you're engaging your board, you're engaging your donors, anyone who's reading this report?
I don't think it can be too short. I mean, I think it can definitely be too long. So, I'd say the old way of doing it would be, thinking about pages and multiples of 4, because that's what printers require, 18, 24, 28 pages. Longer than that's getting to a point where I'd start to wonder if people are, actually reading it, or if it's a coffee table piece. You want people to read it, right? So, and they may, like, if it's really long, but really long doesn't mean that it has to be text, which is why you can complement it with even you may have social media posts that are out there, and you can take those social media posts and embed them instead of a video next to the story you're telling. And then like a Facebook post could be living right here next to a story about like how great Givebutter is, right? And that's interesting and it's engaging, and that may make it a little longer, but so what? I mean, it's good content. I don't think it could be too short. I think disappearing for 9 months and waiting for your next annual report would be the worst thing that you could do.
What a perfect segue, because I wanted to talk a little bit more about that call to action piece and how Givebutter plays into this as well. So
Yeah.
as you mentioned, it is not just an end of year report that you're sending. You definitely want to be engaging your donors throughout the year with these updates, with these reports. And there's no better way to do it than, kind of a formalized manner rather than, a short, like you mentioned, core email without those details. So if you could talk us through what that integration looks like.
I'm looking at this butter dripping down here, and then I'm looking behind you at your wall, Claudia, and I'm thinking how over Thanksgiving weekend, I took my son to the original pancake house and he had waffles. I think it's because of the butter that kind of looks like it's kind of like the shape of a waffle behind you there to your right. And he's 7, and this giant clump of butter was sitting on the waffles, and he took and he eats all the butter. And I'm like, oh my God, that's too much. So, all right. This is a mock report that your team at Givebutter created, which is awesome. It's an impact report. So this is, someone that's saying, oh, I started this organization. It's so great. Here's what we're doing. Couldn't have done it without you. This is for this time of year when you're thinking about Giving Tuesday's half over, but you're thinking about end of year, or you're just thinking about capital campaigns and reports where you want to say something beyond thank you. You need to have a call to action that says, we need you to give. So thanks to an integration between Storyraise and Givebutter, instead of having a button here that would take you to another page and be an extra click or maybe more for your donors, where they then would fill out a donation form, you can have your donors click on the Givebutter donate button, and then your existing Givebutter donation form pops up here. So I could say, all right, I want to give $10 or a box of butter, and I'm going to click continue. I'm going to say, all right, yes, I'm just going to confirm, all right, yes, yes, $10. Click continue. Notice how we haven't left the Storyraise report page. You can see this is powered by Givebutter. And I can go all the way through and pay here until completion, and then stay on the page. And you can still track all that. So that's what you could do. I mean, I have a tip. You want to hear my tip, Claudia?
Of course.
Tip is to duplicate or clone your Givebutter donation form specific to the report you're creating. And then you can track how much money came from that specific report, because otherwise it's going to go into the pile of money you have from all your other elements. So kind of how we talked about segmenting out your audience, break out all your donation forms and Givebutter so that you can track specific campaigns to specific marketing and communication activities.
I think this goes way beyond an email. And I definitely want to see like our customers using it. Another piece that I think is so important, and you highlighted this with our demo,
Yeah.
is the branding aspect to it. So I
Mm.
really love that, you can reinforce that whatever color scheme you're using, whatever logos you have for your organization, you can make this feel like it is just yours exclusively. So shout out to our marketing team for showing all that butter and that purple in there.
Yeah, and they do that by just going into, they must have just gone into their Storyraise brand kit and then filled it with butter and purple. I mean, I'm clicking on mine here, and you could choose your own licensed fonts. So, I mean, there's tons of free fonts available, but if you want to use consistently, you can add them here. But you could just add your own color swatch, right? By adding in your hex codes and everything. It'll save it here so that as you're then creating reports, like the one we just showed here, then you can easily just click buttons, and then actually from the beginning, it'll automatically just start making stuff purple and everything. And if you're interested in more of that, you could just go to the Givebutter integration page and see how all this was done. And it will link you further down, actually, if you click on this image here, and you can see all that yourself. I'll drop this into the chat since I have the URL right in front of me.
I'll also include it in our follow-up email, so you will definitely have the ability to go on and check this out if you're interested. I know I've been asking a lot of questions. I know it's Giving Tuesday, so people are probably like, multitasking, wearing many hats today. But I would love for meaning like Olivia, Renee, Carrie, if you do have any questions, this is the perfect opportunity to ask Josh and Sabrina, especially if you're thinking about your own upcoming reports here, what questions that you have or anything in relation to Storyraise that you saw, and we can get those answered for you here. All right, I see a thumbs up, Olivia. If there's
That would be great, yeah, because we definitely want to do a better job of like donor stewardship and the more personalized. I just love that caveat that you mentioned, the more personalized we can for them and just bump them up to next giving level. I think that's tremendous. So really excited for that.
That's great.
I also see Carrie's comment here, Josh, which I want to read aloud here. No questions, super cool. Just need to build my team so we have capacity to do stuff like this. I completely hear you, Carrie. I was a team of 3 at the old nonprofit that I worked on, and it took a lot of time to actually build out these reports together. But what I'm seeing, Josh, is that I know you showed some examples from Goodwill, United Ways. Those are big organizations, but I'm guessing with that drag and drop tool, it's going to be really simple as creating a Givebutter campaign where all you have to do, you have this template, all you have to do is just add your elements, your images, your text, and things like that. So Carrie, I hear you there. I definitely think that this would be a really quick and easy option to get those reports out.
Yes, Sabrina, I guess we see if you could think of any specific examples, let me know, but like community foundations and small schools, religious organizations, a lot of different nonprofits take advantage of what Claudia was just saying, right? They just want to use a template, get it done quickly, and not spend a lot of time doing it and creating from scratch.
Yeah. Now, Josh, I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about that pricing structure. Just to kind of reinforce, we are a free fundraising platform. So if you do need to spend a couple of dollars here and there for something like engaging impact reports, I think it is worthwhile, especially because that's the best way to communicate with your donors here. So Josh and Sabrina, if you wouldn't mind walking us through that.
Yeah. Why don't I kick us off, Sabrina, and I'll let you talk about the details of what I think is probably the most pertinent here, which is called Storyraise Pro. Which is that, well, first of all, for small organizations that are under $2 million, we automatically give a minimum of a 50% discount. So if you're under $2 million, it's half off at a minimum. And we have a package that is before the discount, $5,700 in reports. You'd have one user, you have an onboarding, and we'll walk you through everything. And you have access to everything that I showed you. It's more of an investment to go after the personalization. It's actually not that much more, but I think if you're a small nonprofit, then and you're not currently doing personalization, I think the way to do that is to just think of like just a few big chunks of audience segments, like everyone who gave over $1,000 or whatever, and make a report just for them. Or if there's a one-off, you could sit there and make one report for like one of your major donors, right? Our personalization and the examples I showed you is more for mass personalization. Like you have at a minimum hundreds of people that you want to create one report to and have it personalized out. We do offer that. It's a little more of an investment. Sabrina, I don't know if you have more to add to that. I probably already talked too much.
No, I think you're spot on. I would just encourage groups, if you are interested, to reach out to Josh or I, and we're happy to look at pricing for your particular organization, because like Josh said, we do have some great discounts for those small nonprofits that we're happy to share with you.
Perfect. So I will be sure to include an email in that follow-up so that if anyone does have any questions, they can reach out to you directly. Now, curious, how quickly can a customer get started today? So are there any verification processes that they have to get through? I'm just kind of thinking next week is already going to be the week of the 15th. So with that in mind, we want to make sure that this is going to be a smooth cruising experience, thinking ahead, getting started, registered, all of that process.
Go ahead, Sabrina. I'll let you keep going.
Okay. Onboarding and setup is very quick. So essentially you get connected with our customer support team. They would get an onboarding scheduled for you where you can make sure that you're comfortable in the platform. And then from there, you're pretty much up and running in the platform. It's very easy to use. So we get really positive feedback with our onboarding that it's quick to pick up. The only verification I believe that we need, Josh, is just that 990 from an organization to help us verify if they're eligible for those high discounts.
Yeah, and we can also look that up afterwards. We just ask for like, your certificate of nonprofit so that, you're not going to be charged tax, but that doesn't even have to be done right up front, just really soon. And then once you start designing, like using the templates, the longest part of the process, and always will be the content that you're creating. So just a matter of how long that takes you. I would highly encourage you to think about content that you already have sitting there and just repurposing it and putting in, because just because you think some of your donors have already seen it doesn't mean they're going to remember, or they have, or would mind seeing it again. And they might not have seen that, they might have not seen content piece number 1 paired with number 2 and number 3 and packaged up in the way you would do here. So, I think it's completely plausible that in 3 weeks or so, you could start and then finish a report. Typically it takes about a month, and the more people you have doing it, the more and the more layers. Obviously it takes longer, and that's common, but we'll help you get going as fast as possible.
Yeah, awesome. I love to hear a quick onboarding experience. So thank you all for making that such an easy and quick process. If there are no other questions, no worries. You can always follow up with email. I will be sure to reach out to Josh, Sabrina, find the appropriate email so that you can get a speedy response there. Thank you guys for joining us for Givebutter office hours today. I know, perfect. So I will be sure to add that. I know that it is a very, very busy day. I have so many emails coming in here, so I can only imagine what's going on in your end. Josh, Sabrina, thank you so much for your time today. And we definitely hope to host another office hour session with you all to make sure that other people know about this
Yeah,
fantastic.
I would need a recap.
Yeah, it
It's
happens.
another day.
I get it.
But no, this is awesome. It's really fun just to see all the integration you guys offer. So we really appreciate it.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
thanks for coming. Yeah, appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, I hope you all have a fantastic Giving Tuesday. I know, Josh, Sabrina, you are going to see lots of people coming to Storyraise thinking about those impact reports here. So let us know if there's any way that we can help, and we'll see you soon. Have a good one.
Thank
Thanks,
you. Take
Claudia.
care.